Now let's talk about Columbus because it's kind of the darling of real estate right now. It still cash flows, lots of jobs. People are putting the chip factories are like, you've got like 9 or 10 of them coming in.
Yeah.
Your airport now has what, 2 terminals?
There's just a lot of good things that are happening. And like, if you look at like the elections, for instance, Ohio actually lost an electorate for the next presidential election. But all that means is we're just cannibalizing all these little small towns in Cleveland and Cincinnati. So we're actually robbing the rest of Ohio of population.
This is real investing. We like to talk about the real no BS side of investing. So we're not going to talk about where you come from and what you did and all that because nobody gives a shit.
After you just did.
You're in Columbus, you do pretty well there, but how's the market? Like, I mean, you buy a bunch of houses, you got a big company, you got a bunch of rentals. How's the market?
For sure. I'm in blue collar real estate, right? So I'm not buying, I call it white collar, blue collar, dog collar. So for me, I'm not buying dog collar, I'm not buying white collar, I'm buying blue collar real estate. If I get stuck in a property, it doesn't sell, I can just rent it out, ride it out for the next 3 to 5 years. And I know because I'm in the right market and I'm buying in the right neighborhoods, right school districts, that in 3 to 5 years, time will make out a good real estate deal no matter what.
Well, I was just saying, like, real estate is always location. When you say blue collar in your location, like what value, like what's the average ARV on those properties?
So average ARV for me is about 250 to 275. But I would say the average price point in Columbus, Ohio is right around 350. So I want to be below that, especially with interest rates the way that they are, just so that I can rent it out. If I get stuck, I can rent it out, make my money, add it to the portfolio, and I'm good.
So you're below the median.
Correct. But I'm not in the $150,000 stuff either.
Right. But like here in Dallas, I mean, good luck finding anything at 250.
Right.
Even distressed.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, I look at it too, like state of the market. Columbus, I feel like I'm just looking into the future. So if you look at like Charlotte or you look at Raleigh or like in Asheville, some of these places have kind of blown up. Columbus just has taken longer to get there. And so if I look at what happened to these places 3, 4, 5 years ago, I literally have a crystal ball into the future on what's going to happen in my market. So that's just, that's kind of the way I look at it.
And are you exclusive to that one market? Because so many investors like, I've got a house in Dallas, I got a house in San Francisco, well, maybe not San Francisco, but like, you know, all over the country. Do you look at it through like, hey, I want to stay in this bubble?
Yeah, 100%. So I read this book called The Art of War.
Mm-hmm.
And
heard of it?
Yep.
You read it.
I know. Very hard read, right? But it said, take your armies and instead of going wide, take them deep. And so I was trying to like go all over Ohio. I was trying to buy deals in Cleveland, Dayton, was trying to go up to Toledo. I was seeing $10,000 houses in Toledo. I'm like, $10,000 houses? Yeah, let's do this. What I ended up doing was nothing. So then I'm like, well, what made me successful in the first place? Just buying the same property over and over and over in Columbus, Ohio. Just do that.
Don't be sexy.
Yeah.
Just do the thing.
And like I bought OhioHome.com.
Sexy?
You know what I mean.
Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
Well,
Make me feel good.
OhioHome.com. Back to
Yeah, so I bought OhioHome.com, like trying to go big. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to be, OhioHome.com. Cost me like $106,000 to buy this domain. So for me, not cheap. And then I was like, yeah, we'll just go back to being a Columbus home company. Just be the local legend in your market, be the guy, and just take your armies and take them deep.
You got a cool URL though.
I got that out of it. Yeah. So when I go to these big conferences, I'm like, yeah, Ohio Home, right?
The Ohio Home.
The
Company.
Ohio Home.
Where do you buy? Columbus.
Yeah, just Columbus.
Now let's talk about Columbus because it's kind of the darling of real estate right now.
For sure.
It still cash flows, lots of jobs. People are putting the chip factories are like, you've got like 9 or 10 of them coming in.
Yeah.
Your airport now has what, 2 terminals?
You actually have to wait like an hour and 15 minutes to get on the plane. Yeah. There's just a lot of good things that are happening. And like, if you look at like the elections, for instance, Ohio actually lost an electorate for the next presidential election. But all that means is we're just cannibalizing all these little small towns in Cleveland and Cincinnati. So we're actually robbing the rest of Ohio of population. So if you look at it, if you're in a small town that's ridden with fentanyl, there's 30,000 people in this town, there's nothing going on, and you graduate high school or you graduate college, where do you want to go? You want to go to Columbus because there's jobs, all your buddies are going there. Ohio State's there. So chances are you're going to wind up in Columbus. So one of the big reasons that we're growing so much.
And you say you do a lot of buy and hold. Because where you're at, it's a college town, is a lot of your tenants college or are they forever? Like, what's the average length of your? It's not stay rental.
So my average tenant stay right now is 4.5 years.
Okay.
Now, when I was doing apartments and houses, and I don't discriminate like on asset class. I'm not a guy that's like hating on apartments or hating on houses or hating on storage units or anything like that. I just found that when I was doing multifamily and houses, my average stay in an apartment was like 18 months, but my average stay in the houses has always been over 4 years. So where are you making your money?
Mm-hmm.
And especially right now when we can't afford to do all these unit turns, like we need people to stay. So the single family side.
So that was a very real comment that some people didn't pick up on. So you own over 100 single family houses.
Yeah, 257. Yep.
Okay. I was going to
Round.
conserve and you just said we can't afford to do all these turns. I think sometimes people think that if they just have more or do more, their problems get solved, versus they don't understand that you just have bigger problems.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like, yay, I have a 9-figure company. That means my problems have 6 figures. It doesn't mean I don't have problems anymore.
Yeah.
You said it was you're barely able to cash flow houses now. When you look at your portfolio versus when you got started, Columbus was known as a cash flow market.
Yeah.
And now you're saying it's not, but the appreciation has to have been astronomical.
On paper, way better. But in real life, kind of sucks.
Well, let's talk about it.
Sure.
Is it maintenance, vacancy, taxes, insurance? What is impacting the cash flow of these assets?
Couple things. So last July, they came out with the new property tax assessments. And you do a 220, I'm not saying 22%, 220%. Like, I'm not lying. Like, I literally, like, I opened up the first 12 pieces of mail. You saw the mail in my office.
That's when I was there.
Yes.
Yeah, because you said something like, I'm not going to pay
I'm
them.
not going to open them.
Oh, not going to open them.
Not going to open them.
Can't pay them if I don't open them.
And I looked at them. I looked what the increases were going to be. And like, I mean, I just cried. I did. Because there's no way I was going to be able to afford it with the rents. But 220% increases. Now I'm asking Mr. and Mrs. Jones to pay $300, $350 more a month. That's not right. You know, and then the insurance costs, like, you know, we had to go to almost like a self-insurance model. So now we're doing $25,000 deductibles on our rentals just to be able
That's
to
just
keep.
catastrophe coverage.
It is. It's catastrophe waiting, right?
Well, I think this goes to, it's a larger conversation in the sense that if you zoom out, and I know this is a real estate, the likelihood of anybody viewing this or listening to this that's not a real estate investor is low. But the reality is there's so much negative press and propaganda that's thrown the big bad real estate investor who's making all this money. And yes, at the end of the day, yes, you can make a ton of money. But when you raise it 220%, ultimately, who's going to get their teeth kicked in? It's that tenant.
Mr. and Mrs. Jones.
Mr. and Mrs. Jones. And it's sad, man. You know, not to get political, but I have been.
Go ahead. We don't care.
Okay. Well, we are in Texas, so I guess I can speak freely. But
You know the internet.
There
you know the
are
internet
certain
like goes beyond
Yes.
where we record this at.
No.
You know, you have to start getting in some of these politicians' ears and letting them know what your problems are, you know? I mean, when you're housing that many people and then you're having this happen, like, dude, like if they find, like, you're on the news, right? And then if you have bad press in the news and your business, it's a whole, like.
You're evil
stack
Terry.
It's a whole stack of dominoes. So the property taxes, that's been a huge thing. Bernie Moreno, who's running for Senate in Ohio, that's like number 3 on his platform, is not having, because it's like, what are our property taxes actually going for? If they're going towards stuff, then great. But if they're not going to anything, then what the hell are we paying them for?
But like state of Texas, our property taxes are just astronomical.
I've heard.
Typically, it's close to 3% of the value of the home per year. Whoa. But here's the thing, crazy thing. Then you hear them talking about we have this surplus fund that's good for the next 10 years or whatever. And it's like, I don't have that. Why don't I get to have that? Why did you get to have that?
Economy,
Right?
right?
Like, yeah, I mean, but ultimately, I think the point that Ryan was making is it doesn't trickle down. It's just if we can't pay our bills, you can't live there.
Correct.
It's just the math. So we have to either sell the house or charge you more.
Right.
And either way, you don't get to live there.
Right. And everybody loses in that scenario,
That's right.
right? So, yeah, I mean, you got the insurance, the taxes was a big hit in Columbus, Ohio. I mean, rates, we could go on for forever about that. But we are doing the interest-only loans right now. I'm calling them Band-Aid loans because I want to pay down debt. I don't want to have all this rack of debt, when I'm 50, 60 years old. But so that's a pivot that we've made, is doing interest only instead of going to these small local community banks. But maintenance, the cost, AC costs have went up, 50, 60%. And so now I'm looking at how can we buy an HVAC company? Can we hire people that are HVAC certified into our company? Can we hire, plumbers? Can we buy a plumbing company? How can we have some of these things into our business and start cutting margins?
I felt so bad a couple months ago. I had this AC unit go out, and I asked a guy to help me get someone over there to fix it. And the guy calls, and it was going to be I think it's $9,800 for a condenser and installed. And it was hot, so there's some surge pricing there. But anyway, I was like, man, that's just way too much. And through the text message chain, he's like, well, you want one that's used? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, that'll be $2,000. I'm just like, that shit's stolen.
Yeah, that's off the back of the truck.
But at that point, I'm just kind of like, I didn't steal it. Someone stole from me, so maybe it's mine.
I like to push back a little bit.
In the Marine Corps, we always said there's only one thief in the Marine Corps. Everyone else is just trying to get their shit back.
I swear to goodness, on Monday, we had a property that we sold this happened on Friday. Property we sold yesterday. It was a duplex. Someone clipped out both the AC units. Shit, you not. Guess who just bought 2 AC units off the back of a truck? Your boy Bobby.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, you just bought my AC units. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks.
So I want to go back a little bit and push back, because what you're referring to is vertical integration, vertical integration, but
buying the AC company,
buying the plumbing and the AC and having all these services. And if you're already making that shift to only doing single family and maybe not so much of the multifamily, and then also only staying in Columbus because you don't want to be too widespread, and Art of War, go deep in that one spot. But aren't you kind of going against that mindset if you are, unless you have a shit ton of doors?
Right.
I'm just a real conversation. I think he's agreeing with me right now, the way he's sitting. But because if you want to go deep, if you're taking that approach and that advice from that book on here, then why all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to add this plumbing component? Because quick zoom out. A couple years ago, one of my guys was like, oh, you should get, a lot of real estate guys. We should get that 360 camera. That's $3,500 and we can go sell those services. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So I spend the $3,500, get this camera. And then I'm like, oh shit, I got to build a new business. You know what that camera's never done?
It's probably never left the bag.
It's never left the shelf. Yeah, because I don't have time to build another business over here.
The eBay listing will be in the show notes.
Well, by now it's not worth it. I'll just put it on the shelf. But my point to that is if you are thinking about doing a plumbing and the AC, those are whole brand new businesses and that come with their own problems.
For sure. So if I have a guy who wants to retire who has 5 techs and he just wants to be done, and I can buy him out knowing that whatever I bought him out, I'm going to have 100% ROI next year. How can I get 100% ROI in my business? I can't.
Right.
And knowing that he wants to run the show and just get a paycheck. And that's what I'm talking about.
Huge difference between building something and buying something.
And buying something. Right.
Huge difference.
So
absolutely.
I just want to buy that time. That's all.
Well,
and that makes sense to me.
You're trying to buy the margin and buy the time and get an ROI at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Because ultimately, I think what I hear though is it's more about trying to lower the cost so you don't have to evict or sell.
And so we can keep people in place.
Well, I mean, that's the whole reason. When I built this company, the media company, everybody's like, don't hire, just per contract, get a contract, day rates. The problem with the video world is day rates is like $1,500 to $2,500. I'd rather just hire somebody and then have access to them all the time. So it sounds like it's similar. Like if you have an HVAC problem and instead of spending a guy $5,000, well, hey, you make $20 an hour or $50 an hour, go fix the thing.
Bingo.
There you go.
Bingo.
Yeah, get it.
So, buy your Freon by the pallet.
Exactly. And, for us, I mean, we have, an acquisition side, and these all have separate bank accounts, LLCs, divisions, all that stuff, completely separated. But we look at it in a couple different components. We have the acquisitions division. We have our flip division. We have our buy and hold division. We also have a construction company where we have 16 full-time guys that swing hammers. And that basically just feeds all of our rehabs. So I know that they're done on time, they're done correctly. We can try to be in budget. I mean, let's be real, we're never always in budget or never on time, but at least we can try, right?
But do you at least have a budget?
But at least for sure.
Well, there you go.
We have
That's a
control.
start.
But for us, we're buying the same house over and over.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything more than a $60,000 rehab. So if we go over $5,000, am I going to make that back? Yeah,
How much was that $60,000 rehab 4 years ago?
30.
Hmm.
When I would look at one of these split level houses that needed paint, carpet, maybe a redo of the kitchen, maybe you're painting the cabinets, throwing on a slab of granite and kind of putting it back on the market, that's $30,000.
So you're a young guy.
I?
You're less than 40 still, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
38, 39?
38. Yeah. I'll take it.
I pay attention.
I'll take it.
You're a young guy, but you said you don't want to have all this debt when you're, I think, 60 or 65 is what you just said. Let's just fast forward there for fun.
Sure.
We're, what is that? Help me out. 20 years from now, just call it. The year is 2045. Do you still have all these divisions? Do you still own the houses?
He owns Columbus.
Or are you the mayor? You ever seen the mayor of Kingstown? Anyway,
I have. That is a great series, by the way.
Yeah. So that's going to be Terry. Anyway, what does it look like? Like, do you sell the portfolio? Do you keep the portfolio? Do you just finally give in and hire a management company and let them do it all?
No, I'll never do that.
What's the vision of the goal there?
I think for me, so I'm always looking at return on equity. You talk about this all the time, and I'm 100% for it. So for instance, that duplex I sold, I bought that thing for $75,000 at the end of 2019. Someone was willing to pay $375 for it. My basis was $180. My debt on it is only like $90. Why am I holding on to that property when each unit rents for $1,200, $1,300?
Right.
I'm going to get $2,600 a month in rent, $375,000, and I can walk away with close to $300,000.
Right.
Sell that damn thing.
Because
right?
if you can even go make 10 or 15%
in the
on
market,
that money,
yeah.
I mean,
or I go lend it out at 14%. Like I'm making a higher return doing this. So I'm always looking at my properties, stock portfolio, whatever, any money that I have, any equity I have. I'm always looking at what is the best use case for this equity at this particular time.
because it's an asset. Like too many people, and you and I talk about this a lot, and we'll go on a little tangent. If you're listening and you don't look at your property equity the same way you look at your bank account, you're wrong. If you don't look at your property equity the same way you look at your stock portfolio, you're wrong. Like if this thing's not going up by 5-10% a year, you need to change what you're investing in. You need to get different stocks or liquidate or something, right? Because same thing with this equity. If this equity's not earning you 5 to 10% a year and you're married to that equity, it's time to let the equity move. We talk about this a lot.
People get emotional about property, and they get emotional about tenants
in their investments. And then, do you think it's the emotionality to the property itself, or the decision making? And like, hey, I want to be right, and because I did this thing, I'm going to stay on it because I made that decision.
You go, then I'll go.
Okay. Well, think about like every real estate investor that's bought like their first couple properties, and you think about how much you had to save, the sacrifices you had to make, all these things that you did that cultivated in you buying this property. You get emotional about it, right? And you never want to let it go. Like the second house I ever bought, I don't know that I can sell that thing. Like it was, I remember the whole thing. Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, but see, I get emotional too. But like, imagine everyone else that's, maybe a 5, 10, 20 unit person. Like they don't want to let go of that property. So I just think that we get way too emotional about it instead of looking at it just, hey, here's the numbers, here's what I can do. And quite frankly, if you're putting your money into a passive vehicle like loaning money or stock market or some other vehicle where it's true mailbox money, not rentals, you're going to have more time and more headspace too.
It's purely FOMO. If I bought the house for 100, now it's worth 200. What if it becomes worth 500 one day? And it's this, we've already done the hard work. I don't want to miss out on something, instead of understanding that 100,000 in equity is an asset that you could use to go buy a $500,000 asset right now, put 20% down, cash flow, but now the compounded growth is not on the equity, it's on the asset value. So over here, you're getting 3% on 200,000, that same asset. Well, now you're getting 3% on 500,000. So that equity is no longer serving you there. You created it. You have to look at that as the fruit, but then you need to recycle it. It's the reason hedge funds exit every 5 to 7 years. They have to turn the equity into larger asset values, because the larger asset values give them faster compounded growth, which gets them bigger assets under management.
So one thing after hearing that, and I think what would be very helpful for real estate investors is, instead of looking at a house as a house, look at it as a cell in a spreadsheet. Because would you ever get emotional to a cell on an Excel spreadsheet? Right. It's just a damn number. It's just a whatever. Right. But again, you have that emotional component. So if you could zoom out and just think of, hey, it's just A column, row 3. Yep. Who's going to get emotional about that?
So this is our biggest problem right now in our family. We have the house that I fought the HOA on for 2 years and lost.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
It used to be our family home. It's an emotional house for Jennifer. She doesn't want to sell it. We have a 3.25% interest rate. She doesn't want to sell it. We have $500,000 in equity. She doesn't want to sell it. It's sitting there vacant for 8 months now. She doesn't want to sell it. She wants to look at it as it's kind of like a savings account. And you can look at it that way. I mean, it is appreciating. It is a good asset. Even the appreciation we're still getting out is higher than our actual payment and what we're spending. But what I'm trying to show her by putting it into a cell in a spreadsheet is like, hun, look, we get this $500,000. You put $100,000 over here in a savings account because you like safety and you like to look at money on your Chase app. Awesome. Then you take $400,000 and you go buy 3 $300,000 houses, brand new builds. I don't care. Put $100,000 down on each of them. Your equity on your balance sheet, which you talk about a lot, is the same. You still have $400,000 in net worth. But now I'm appreciating at 3% a year, let's just say, on $900,000 worth of assets instead of one $600,000 house. So actually, what I just did is I put $100,000 aside to make her feel good. And that's probably getting, 3% right now. Yeah. So it's growing at 3%. And then now the other ones, I'm growing at 3%, but 3% on 300,000, not 3% on 100,000. So now my return on equity is well over 15%. And I diversified.
And you get to speed depreciate all over again. Right?
So one thing that, at least in the 15 years of being adjacent to real estate, or whether I was in real estate, it doesn't matter, is we always talk about time value money, but we're always referring it to more of like a social aspect of like, if I'm doing this and I'm not doing that, how can I make money over here and make money over there? But like, and I don't always want to go back to SMU MBA program.
You should.
But like, I'm going back to school this fall for SMU Executive MBA program. But literally the workshop I was in yesterday, and I'm going to right after this, they put a formula aspect to a time value money. And I never knew, I'm sure I knew when I was in college about this formula, but like, because I always associated time value money as more of that social aspect of, almost like in the equivalent opportunity cost. Yeah. If I'm over here, I can't be there. But literally, like there's formulas of present value, future value, and all the, and you're just like, oh, good man. No wonder these executives in these big buildings make all the money.
Regular real estate investors never look at it that way.
That's my point.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like the amount of properties that I've bought by saying, hey, this thing appreciated by X amount, I can take 100 or 200 grand. I can move that into $1 million worth of property. 1031 exchange, by the way. Or maybe I buy 5 properties on 1031 exchange, which means I don't pay any taxes on the gain. Only when I go to exit out those other 5 properties, unless I 1031 again until I die, then eventually you're going to pay. But
your kids are.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try not to make them pay. But my point being is now you're just starting that cycle all over again. I think the thing that real estate investors miss out on too is when you own a property for too long, that's a huge mistake. Because if you own it for more than 5 or 7 years, I mean, look what we're doing right now. We already have to paint the gray walls. The gray LVPs are all coming up, right? The cabinets that we were buying in 2019, they suck. People want some colors besides white, right? Like the subway, the little subway tiles are no longer that cool. Right. Like we have to redo these things every 5 to 7 years. So you need to exit at the right time, so that way you don't have to go in and redo all these things too.
One thing I'd also, that house, are y'all short-term renting it, or is it just empty?
It's empty.
So one thing
We stay there when the power goes out or when she's mad at me.
but I mean, we all know that like a house, if it's vacant, it dies. Like houses have their own livelihood. So it needs people, like the energy of people to be in there to keep it alive. Because like, look at most vacant houses. When they're vacant and they just sit stagnant, they fall apart. And it's like, it's hard to explain. It's like, why would it fall apart? It's just right there. But they do. So that's another thing that y'all have to consider is like, that's great that we own this asset and it keeps appreciating, but the longer it stays vacant, the more it's just going to fall apart.
I want to talk about the human element of this thing, too.
Please.
So if I ever run for political office, please like put this on camera. But
Get rid
Look
of
at
the
right there,
bar.
right there.
so one of the things that we do is every 30 days, we're looking 60 days out to see who's going to renew. And we rate our tenants in a green, yellow, and red based on their payment history. And also based on like when we go, like for instance, when maintenance goes in the house on our next team meeting, we say, hey, how clean they keep the house? They're like, they're dirty, they're red. Or, hey, they're okay. It's just a little messy. There's some crayon on the wall, but it's paint and carpet. We'll be fine. Rate them a yellow. If it's super clean, they're a green. Man, we want to treat that tenant like gold, right? Because they've treated us the same way. So even though I'm looking at these things in a cell and on a spreadsheet, I'm looking at how these tenants are treating us as well. If they're treating us well, I want to do the same thing for them. Like I want to make sure, hey, we can work with this tenant to keep them in the house because they're going to be there forever. Instead of them being there 4.5 years, maybe they're there for 7 years, and then I don't have to do all the work once they leave anyway.
Well, also, if you have 257 doors in one market and they get a job on the other side of town, if they're a good tenant and you have an opening, you can just swap them over.
We swap them over, man. And if all we have to do is go in there and paint, maybe change a little bit of flooring out or whatever, and we're spending a grand, $2,000, great. Like we've gotten the life out of that tenant, right? Like I want to keep people in there that are keeping the houses up.
What philosophy aside, what are some other things that I like that red, yellow, green thing?
It's simple.
You've learned a lot in the 12 years you've been doing this. What are some other things? Oh, by the way, hang on. Did you know he first met me at the Baltimore REI Expo?
Dude, April, what was it? Late April.
He ran
2013.
You ran that?
Yeah.
He was the boss, man.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Man, that was the very first real estate event I ever went to.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. No, I'm serious, man. I had literally just quit my job April 11th, 2013. And I'm like, dude, I feel like I'm on an island. I've got like 30 some rentals and I just need like people that are like in my same situation. That was the very first event I ever went to.
It's so funny,
We said we didn't care how you got started, but now we do.
Now we do.
now we do.
Yeah. Go on. No, it's just so funny. Like when you're in an industry like real estate, or probably any industry, and you're there long enough, you know the players, you know the influencers, and you know who the clowns are, you know who used to be full of shit, that maybe they're whatever, it doesn't matter. But you just know the skeletons. And it's just really cool to see people's evolutions and some people's stagnation, some people's downfall. Obviously, you don't wish any of that, but I think that's really cool to hear that, hey, I was at this Baltimore event in 2013,
And this guy finally got on Instagram, and I'm like, holy smokes, it's Tim Aarons.
I remember that dude.
I'm like, yeah, holy smokes, this dude like put me on another trajectory without him even knowing.
It would be very painful if we started talking about how many things that Tim and I have innovated, and then we're like, and maybe we just put on a shelf and move it on to the next thing, and we're just like, damn it, if we just kept doing that. Because like the content thing, he gives me this prop all the time. We would do at conferences like live podcasty type things at the conference. We would film a lot of stuff, but we just never put it on like YouTube. Because why would you put real estate content on YouTube?
Everyone else does it.
Now
They didn't then.
Yeah.
But back in 2012, 13, 14, it was like the goofy guys, like
In the 25th, the last expo we ran together, he set up a booth just like this on a stage, and he's recording at his speed and all like
Pettit,
all,
Julie
you remember all the
Pettit,
speakers
yeah.
we had, like we just barely put it on the YouTube channel, like never really did anything with it. Like it was, it's one of those things you look back, it's just like all the houses. I mean, there's houses right out here that I used to buy for $3,000.
Or the large conferences too, like the Dallas conference we had, it was a 1,600 person event, and I always get a chuckle the last like 5-6 years, like we're the largest real estate investor event. We've got 800 people. Like, Okay.
We had you smoked a decade ago.
Sure, buddy.
Uh, Anyway, I wanted to ask this. The red, yellow, green thing was helpful. In the 12 years you've been doing this, you've learned a lot about operating rental property.
Yeah.
Could we maybe spend 5 or 10 minutes giving advice, real advice, not this bullshit people say like, oh, buy your tenant a turkey every Thanksgiving.
Or buy my $9.97 course to find the real information.
Yeah.
Oh, too close to home? My bad.
Not at all. Dude, I'm the person that hates on gurus, that hates on other people.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't care how you make money. If you're making money, great. Let's figure out how you're doing it and how can we thief some stuff from you and make it our own, right?
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Anyway, so
tips for operating long-term rentals.
Try to cluster things. So this is like for instance, one of the things I did originally, and I didn't realize I was buying by school district. And there were 2 school districts that were, again, in that blue collar, like real estate space and price point. And I didn't realize, but people would always ask, like on the leasing appointment, is this Groveport Schools or is this Hamilton? I'm like, this is Groveport. They're like, sorry, can't go here. And like Hamilton Schools was just another street over, but I had all these houses over in Groveport. And I'm like, damn it, that sucks because I could have charged another couple $100. Now it's like another $400 more a month.
Really? From one street, huh?
One street. So like these are like knowing your market, knowing street by street how things fall, and getting the weeds of stuff. Like if you're in the weeds of seeing like what your leasing appointments are actually like, then you can start navigating, right? But if you get too high up and you don't understand those conversations, what people want, like something as simple as a school district. Like,
well, I'd like to pause on that because I think that's a very helpful tip of not just the school district, but just knowing what your customers want. But the reality of like, oh, if everybody wants this specific school district, I can charge a premium because of that. But you can't just charge a premium because the comps say. Fully understanding the why, then I think is a much better way to be able to charge that premium.
I think to that point, there's certain intangibles that go along with where people want to live, right? In general, people that want to live in a home with multiple bedrooms have children. In general, they care about where their children go to school. In general, they care if they're safe. In general, they care if there's a lot of traffic in the front yard. Like you said something earlier. God, I can't remember. I wish I could rewind. Something about being a decent human being or just being a human being. Like there's just such a human being aspect to housing that you just got to learn it and think about it.
I mean, put yourself in their shoes. What do they want?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes, as real estate investors, we get a little high on our horse. Is that what they call it down here? High on your horse?
Yeah.
And you start forgetting like what it's like to be maybe that renter or that tenant. Okay, what do they want? They want a decent school. They want maybe a big front yard. Some people, if they're single, don't want that huge yard. But some of our highest renting houses have these humongous 1 acre yards, and people pay rent for them because they want to go outside, put swing sets back there, all that type of stuff. So, there's selling points for everything. But I talked about clustering properties. We used to have properties on the west side of town, this area called Galloway, and it was a decent school district. It fit our buy box, all that stuff. But you know how long it took to get there from downtown Columbus? It was a 40-minute drive, 40-minute drive back. And so we realized that we were like, if we had a problem over here, we were only taking care of 2 problems a day. So one of the things I've tried to do is just kind of cluster our properties together. But at the same time, you don't want to own the neighborhood because then if the neighborhood goes to crap, it's almost like an apartment building that goes to crap. Yeah. You own too many rentals in one specific neighborhood. So I look at myself as like, you kind of want to be a wave rider. Like you want someone to be the first one to sell that property in that neighborhood before you go in there. You don't want to be the person that has to start the wave. But if you own too much stuff in one neighborhood, it can go to crap really quick. If you own just enough, you can kind of ride that wave, but really deep. But I don't know if that makes sense or not. But.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like on one hand, you want to be in the niche, but you also want to be diverse enough to where if that niche collapses, you're not wiped out.
And you have owner occupants that are still selling their houses for top dollar, and you're able to ride that wave, right?
Yeah, because think about like, say you had 1,000 houses. Sounds like a good idea. What if they're all in the floodplains of New Orleans and a Hurricane Katrina comes in and wipes you out?
Yeah, you have 1,000 lots.
Exactly. No, but I'm just saying, it's like, or if you're in Tornado Alley and all your houses get wiped out in one storm.
Well, or said another way,
it's just the diversity part.
I'm about to go through 2 years of hell where I live. I live in kind of rural Texas on the north side of Rockwall that you have to take a state highway to and then turn down a farm to market road. Right now, that farm to market road is 2 lanes, asphalt. And they've got the cones out and they're about to tear it up. And it's going to be 4 lanes in concrete in the next 2 to 4 years.
I love your optimism.
Yeah, I said 2 to 4. They said 2.
He
so
said 2, and he quickly said 2 to 4, and I'm yet still saying that's
yeah.
optimistic.
I mean, so like literally, like
This is
now,
Texas, baby.
now they're relocating utilities, which means when I try to work from home, I may have internet, I may not. I may have water, I may not, and that's before they start tearing up the road. Now it's one way. You can't turn onto the street from this way to that way. So the whole point
luckily
is,
you have another house.
yeah. You joke, but
We've got a neighborhood like that in Columbus, and it's one of our lower price point neighborhoods, but it's literally right beside the college and the university. The only thing separating it is 71. So they used to call it Linden. Now some people are calling it East Clintonville, and Clintonville's like that hippie neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's a ton of traffic. Like you can only go down one way on certain streets, and you got to kind of zigzag to get to your house.
if you had too many in there, it could affect your entire portfolio.
It has.
Oh,
We can't charge as much in rent. The area hasn't really came up the way that we thought it would. And now it's going to be another 4 or 5 years once they're done, hopefully, with all the streets and, putting up the street lights, and they're doing Wi-Fi, I guess, from the street lamps and stuff like that. But it's going to be another 5 years, right?
You're a young dude, right? How do you go from, hey, I saw this goofy guy on stage in Baltimore in 2013 to having 257 doors in 10, 12 years? Because I know 10 years is a long time, but 257 is a ton of acquisitions.
I mean, there's guys that have 3,000, 10,000, 20,000 doors.
I understand.
They get, just
take the compliment and answer the question.
okay, fair enough. So for me, it's like every dollar that I have needs to have a return to it. So like, for instance, the money that I had saved up, I'm like, okay, this needs to go into a property. I would empty out my bank account, go buy a property. That equity, I would take that equity, boom, this equity needs to get rolled into another property. Hey, I haven't had an FHA house hack in 6 months and a day. Probably should go ahead and move out of this house, buy another one on an FHA house hack, rent that out. If you do that over a period of 10 years, like the stuff starts to compound, right?
So I actually got to stop you because I'm going to answer the question because I know the story. First off, he made the sacrifice that most people were not willing to. Like he was buying investment properties, sleeping on his friend's couch. Like he sacrificed personal income, personal gain, personal growth to build investment income, investment growth, investment portfolio. So then these house hacks, like I was talking with one of his business partners earlier, like he would move his wife in and they'd live in the house and paint the house and fix the house and then sell the house, move into another one. Like, I mean, he started out by doing that. And as you know, it's a slow roll to get going, but if you actually stay disciplined on it, I mean, 1 becomes 2 and 2 becomes 4 and 4 becomes 8 and 8 becomes 16. It's just too many people, shiny object syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
One thing he does that maybe you can talk about is he's a big believer in investing in the stock market. A lot of investors, want to sit there and poo-poo on it.
Right.
Because they don't know what they're talking about. He invests in the stock market, but also has a line of credit against those stocks. So whenever he needs liquidity, instead of selling an asset, he can simply borrow against it and then you deploy it and then pay it back. And it's the lowest interest loan on the market.
So what I'm hearing, and it goes back to a common theme with these conversations, is if you want to be a professional real estate investor, be professional. And you hear stock market, you hear, going against that, lending against that, line of credit against that. That sounds professional. That sounds executive. That sounds like something an adult would do versus like a typical real investor. Like, I mean, let's face it.
The title of this episode, Be an Adult.
No, but seriously, like, can you imagine the wholesaler? And I'm not trying to poo-poo on a wholesaler, but like the typical wholesaler that's like, I'm doing 3 deals a month, and they're like, you've done 1 deal in the last 10 years, but it's the you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, for sure. So
I don't know what I
one of
just
the big
said,
things
but-
I always say is if you don't need it in your bank account, put it on your balance sheet. And like a lot of these guys
Don't know what a balance sheet
they
is.
have no idea. They'll make $100,000 a month, not knowing that they're going to have 50 come back out between marketing, labor, and all this other stuff. 50 is generous. I would say probably 30 or 40 at best. Then they're popping bottles at the club. Next thing you know, now that bank account's drained down to 10. But if they would have taken that $100,000 that they were going to make, left it in the deals as equity, they would have probably bought 5 or 6 properties. Then just live broke for a little bit, right? Because a lot of these are, I call them kids. A lot of the wholesalers are younger guys, right? Just live broke for a little bit. Don't go pop bottles. Then that 6, you can do that the next month. Now you got 12. Then that compounds. Then those assets are making money, and those are creating equity, and then it just snowballs.
I think what I'm hearing is, because you see it all the time, it's like they forget that they ate shit for 6 months or a year to get to that deal, and then they got $25,000, and they don't realize, like, wait a minute, how long did it take you to do that deal? What's 25 divided by 12? Okay, that's like what, 2,000 plus little change? That's not a lot. So why are you taking that and then immediately doing bottle service, whatever?
But having those large deposits in your bank account, I mean, it does mess with your head. I mean, largest deposit you've probably ever had probably messed with you. You probably sat there and just looked at it and just.
I ain't gonna lie. Like, it got to where I didn't want to work, and I would like open my TD Ameritrade account every morning, and be like, and then close it, and then like, who wants to go eat barbecue? You know what I mean?
So on that, one of the things that I've say a lot is to people that maybe don't own a business is like, money before you're a business owner is like, money. But then when you own businesses and then you actually have to spend a lot of money, it's just a hammer. It's just another tool. So I look at money the same way I look at a camera. It's just another asset to be able to do.
You got a $75,000 camera over there.
This is true.
Thanks, sweet.
Yeah, thank you. But like, but my point being is, though, it's like, if you gave me $100,000 today, I'd say thank you. But that dopamine hit that I would have gotten 10 years ago, I don't get, because I understand I've got debt. I've got to pay for that camera. I got to pay for the team, and I could literally deploy that 100 like that. So therefore, there's still, even if you give me 100,000, it's not like there's room to go pop bottles.
For sure. And I remember the first,
although I'd probably try.
The very first big check I ever had, I took 15 rental properties, and which was my personal house at the time, but I quote unquote wasn't living there. And I refinanced all of them, did a cash out refinance with Savings Bank of Circleville, which no one's even heard of, right? Found them in the yellow pages.
Circleville. This sounds like something on like the CW network.
Do they make MBA loans?
I don't even know what it is. But anyway, but yeah, found them in the yellow pages and called this guy named Mark. And Mark was like, yeah, we could do this blanket loan. And I'm like, okay. And it like sounded too good to be true. He's like, yeah, loan got approved through loan committee. Only problem is it's going to be 4.75% instead of that 4.5 we were looking for. I said, man, that sucks, but okay. Like, still not thinking it's real, right? The cash out on that thing was like $276,000. And so I remember driving back to my job at Chase and I'm like, holy smokes, like I'm richer than like my boss's boss's boss, right? And I'm like praying over this check, like don't screw this up. But like I had to like come to grips with like, this is a lot of money, right? And then, this week had a similar drop in the bank account. I'm like, this is already allocated. It's already gone. So like you have to become numb to the bigger numbers.
Well, I'm still in the process of finalizing my 23 taxes, like you do, in August of 2024.
They're not due till October.
They're not due to October. I agree with that.
Okay, cool. We're on the same page.
We're all
team weight, man.
Team weight. Team get it right.
You got to finish all the partnerships and corporations before.
Yeah, but my point I'm trying to make is like to where it doesn't feel real. You look at how much revenue or how much cash flow came in through your bank account, came in through your company, and it's like, it doesn't feel it feels like funny money, especially if like you're in a startup mode, grinding mode, where it's just
I'll tell you. So number one, I'm going to say something. It's not a shot at any one person.
I'm offended.
But a lot of newer investors need to be careful what they listen to, because you hear people talking about words matter, right? Like, we contracted X number of houses means that less than half closed. We locked up X number of houses means that less than half closed. We bought a number that sounds too high probably means they make $3,000 to $5,000 a house, right? Like, I know plenty of investors that buy 5 or 6 a month that their P&L is so much higher than some of these 300 house a year guys and gals.
Yeah.
As a lender, I happen to see bank accounts, and I see, people's schedule of real estate owned. As I have as a lender, is I have a debt fund, right? So I'm always worried about making the highest return for my investors over here. I have an operating company that I'm trying to make sure I have enough money to pay all my bills and I have enough profit coming in to keep paying my bills, but not too much money that's not being used where it's not making a return.
Yep.
And then the debt fund's really hard because if Ryan says, hey, I want to invest $1 million, I may not want his $1 million right now. Because if I take his $1 million, I have to start paying a preferred return that day.
Yep.
And it affects all my other investors too, because now the capital allocation is different. The IRR drag. So like sometimes, like you said, you started this line of conversation, any money in the bank, I think you said is a bad thing or it needs to be allocated.
It needs to be allocated.
Yeah, I mean, it goes along with the conversation about equity. I'll be a little spiritual, I guess. I believe that, I'm a grateful man. I've been very, very fortunate. I don't feel like I deserve anything like I have. And I come from very humble beginnings. And like every dollar and every house and all the equity that you're given is a gift. I say from God, you can say from whoever. And like, you have to be a good steward of it. And if you're not a good steward of it, you will lose it. And I've seen it time and time again. So like, kind of put a pin on that and then we'll wrap up is like, one of the things you talk about a lot that I'm in alignment with is your balance sheet needs to be watched just like your bank account. And you need to learn that. You need to produce off of it. It's an asset you have. It's your job to grow it for yourself and for your family.
For sure. To add to that, one of the things that I have learned is liquidity means a lot. That's why I started, I was an anti-stock market guy for a very long time. Then 2020 hit and I'm like, well, Carnival Cruise Lines used to trade at $38-40 a share. Now it's at $8. I'm like, this can't get any worse. And if it does, what are they going to do with the ships? These ships have value, right?
Oil was at $0.
Yeah, it was
negative.
I bought Oxy, like I bought all this stuff, right? And I'm like, this is stupid. And I took $300,000 and almost ran it up to 1.4 mil. Just buying stuff that everyone else was afraid to buy. Rode it up until like March 3rd, then lost like $300,000 in the day when all the EV stocks kind of went. But then I was like, look, like if you just put your money here, it's a 10 to 12% thing per year, put it in blue chip stuff. And then when I realized like Elon Musk and everybody else just borrows off this thing, it made sense. Why would I have cash when I can't borrow my cash? Why not have your cash sit in an asset that is liquid? You can borrow in one day, you put it in real estate. Now your real estate's doing the same thing. Then once you make money in real estate, you put it and you buy more assets on the traditional market, stock market. Then just borrow it back out again and then buy more real estate.
If that asset's making 8 and you're paying 4 to borrow against it, you're still making 4
Absolutely.
on someone else's money and on whatever you go find to invest in.
And it just...
One thing, just to put a pin in, because I think it's so important, especially in this world of real estate, is being careful who you're listening to. And I think I've talked about it before, but I have a friend that was like wanted to start a new executive mastermind. And part of that mastermind was having a third party authenticator to come in, like a CPA to come in and look at your books, just to make sure that you had at least $2 million worth of revenue. Just $2 million, and you don't have to disclose anything.
And that's
it's
revenue,
a third
not profit.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Just
it's still a business.
But the point being is, like, so many people were, I'm down for it, and then they heard that there was going to be a third party authenticator, and then they're out. So that, I mean, and that just goes to show that. And who knows? Maybe they don't like the guy. That's not the point of it. But there's so many people in this business that talk a big game that they're full of shit. And what I always tell people is don't pay any money to any mentor out there until at least you know the language of the business. So if you're new, watch podcasts, read books, go to YouTube, go to meetups, learn stuff. But until you know the language, don't pay anybody money.
Yeah. Some people need to be sold in the very beginning, but very few people don't need to be. There's a lot of people that don't need to be sold. And like you get a gut feeling about like when someone's talking about this and they're that, they're the loudest person in the room. Generally, they're full of shit. But it's those quiet people that really don't care. Maybe they don't have the nicest shoes on. It's usually the guys the fanciest stuff that have the least amount.
Well, and on that, some of the frugal, it's the frugal guys. The biggest guys I know in any business, they're the most frugal. Like the largest guy I know, he had Mavericks tickets, season tickets. And then he opted out of playoff tickets because American Airlines kept literally jacking prices on everything. And I'm like, dude, do you not know how much money you have in the bank? Like,
It was principal to him.
Principal. And then so he didn't re-up his he didn't get his playoff tickets, and then he didn't even re-up the season tickets, because to him, the fact that they kept on raising prices, everything, it's like it didn't match with his frugal mindset.
One thing I want to add to this whole thing is, just if you are going to pay money to a mentor or whatever, just look at their business. If they're not actually operating the business that they claim to teach, like, is this someone you want to pay money to? Like, because they're not going to be, in line with trends. They're not evolving. Real estate cycles, every 3-6 months, things can change in a minute. Like, and we have to change along with it. So if they're not operating that business, like,
Yeah.
I would, there's some people that can teach, and some people, I want to tread carefully when I say
Right.
that.
No,
But
let me say it this way. 10 years ago, I would argue with you that I could have taught wholesaling better than anybody in this nation. Today, it would be a waste of your money to pay me for wholesaling. My company still does it, but all this text mess, it's just not me anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's be careful. Not only do they currently do it, but did they do it before and now they don't? Because you can get out of date really quick. It's like a carton of milk.
Real quick, but I will compliment you. I don't compliment you much, but I will. But if you were to go into the kitchen, you could still close, because that skill set is a timeless skill set.
I will still be any of y'all at the kitchen table.
There you go.
I ain't doing this phone sales, close a lot of people and trick them.
Yeah. So to wrap up, because this is the Real Investing podcast, what is some real advice that you would give to, either
The
somebody
everyday investor.
to the everyday investor? Yeah.
one, always connect with people. Like, whether it's a realtor, wholesaler, lenders, always just be out there. Always talk to people. I write, one of my big things is connect with 5 people a day. Just pick up the phone, call them, send a text message, whatever. Because if you're at the forefront of a lot of people's mind, you're going to get the deals, you're going to find money. You're just going to randomly fall into stuff. So I would say just call 5 people a day, 5 people in the industry.
I think it's great. Yeah.
2, I'm a huge fan of buying rental property. I think everyone should own rental property. But I think you also need to know how to flip properties and know when to sell, because you're not just going to retire on passive income from properties. You need to learn how to trade in and out of these things, learn how to do a correct flip, learn how to rehab correctly when you flip properties. Don't just try to hold them, but make sure that you do own rental property. And number 3, I drink the Kool-Aid too, with mentors and masterminds and all that stuff. Just find the right people, find people that you vibe with and that are where you want to be. And then, those are 3 tangible pieces.
I'll let you close it out, but I'm going to go next. He's not bullshitting. For my birthday, dude sends me this hairy chest video. He's walking around by his pool, and he sang me happy birthday. I get random texts from him of just, hey, dude, hadn't talked to you in a while. Hope you're doing well. And in the 2 years that we've reconnected since, when I had no idea
you
who he
started
was.
him in his journey at Baltimore.
I would say he's become a very good friend, because when he says that about the connecting, it is not bullshit. It's something he lives by, and it makes him a very special person to me and probably to other people.
Because I feel like I'm good at connecting, but if I'm not actively I probably should follow up with Tim or follow up with Terry, I will lose that. I think it's, getting hit in the head, playing rugby or cheerleading or big gun go boom in the Marines. I don't know.
By the way, this is so funny. I have to interrupt you. College cheerleader,
2-time national champion,
Ooh,
U.S. Marine artillery man,
big gun go boom.
big gun go boom.
and rugby player.
I like that one too.
Yeah.
So those of you who want to make fun of male
No
cheerleaders,
helmets.
come
No
meet
helmets.
this guy.
I also love Broadway musicals.
This guy just gets more interesting by the second.
Follow the Interesting Guy podcast.com. Yeah.
But that part is cool though. Just being an interesting person or a person of interest, if you're just there trying to network and you're not trying to connect or, for instance, I play drums in a rock band. I'm not shy about it. I love it. That's my hobby. That's what I like doing. Some people like to golf. That's what I do. Some people will connect with that. Some people won't, but.
And he owns the Pros Gym, Arnold Schwarzenegger's gym. What's it called?
It's called the Pros Gym, but it's the unofficial gym of the Arnold Classic. We have to say it like that now.
Whatever.
Arnold got a little.
Arnold goes in there and works out.
Paid times a year.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for watching the Real Investing podcast. Thank you, Terry, for being here.
Absolutely.
You know, how can they find you? What are you looking for? How can we help you out?
Always looking for deals, looking for money, and looking to help other people. So you can find me on Instagram. That's at Tarry Sums, TarrySumms. You can hit me up on Facebook. And then my email is Terry@OhioHome, TARRY@OhioHome.com.
Ternus Lending.
We want to loan you money. Call us.
That was a great plug. You know, hey everybody, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.